If you or someone you know has diabetes, you may have built up an extra supply of test strips and lancets. That's where we come in. We'll buy the supplies that you don't need and resell them to those in need to prevent waste. Help us make diabetes management more affordable. Visit us at teststripswithaz.com.
All right, everybody. Joining me right now is a guy who is really starting to get the credit and the notoriety he deserves, in my opinion. He's the man, the head coach of Factory X. I actually talked to two members of his fight team a couple weeks ago, or last week, as a matter of fact. Both were honored to be a part of this team, and we're checking in with the coach, Marc Montoya. Marc, how are you, man?
I'm great, man. Hey, thanks for having me on. It's always a pleasure. Which two of my guys do you have on last week?
I had... Who did I have? I had Devante Smith.
Okay, yeah.
And, God, it's
Jonathan?
on my mind. Wasn't Jonathan. No, it wasn't Jonathan.
Okay.
Hold on, now it's driving me nuts. I know I had two of your guys on, though, because we talked about both of them. I'll figure it out. It's all going to pop into my head.
Awesome.
But listen, Marc,
Awesome.
there's just so much to talk about right now, and I could talk to you for 2 hours for sure, but I want to start with this big...
Let's go.
Yeah, man. Big news in the MMA world today. Georges St-Pierre officially retiring from the sport of mixed martial arts. Did so in a press conference this morning, and I'm not sure if you've had any run-ins or meetups with GSP throughout the course of your career, but, you know, what are your thoughts on GSP retiring and who he is, or should I say who he was as an athlete and as a fighter?
Oh, I have the utmost respect for GSP. He's been a trailblazer for MMA, and you have to respect that regime of guys that are in his era. You know, he's always gone out there and been a professional. I've met him a few times. I can't say that I know him, but I've met him a few times, and he's been nothing but respectful to me. And you know, I'm a fan of his. He's gone out there and done amazing stuff in his fighting career, and he's really paved the way off the mat as well. You know, he's gone out there and landed some big sponsorship stuff and showed the MMA world that this is possible. And so he's been a trailblazer on both fronts, both in fighting and outside of fighting. And I respect him a ton. And man, these kids today, the vets today, they can still learn from a guy like that.
Personally, in your opinion, because I was kind of torn about this earlier, do you think he's really done, or do you think we'll see him again?
I'm going to say my opinion is he's done. I think he's pretty calculated when he does stuff, and I think that what's the point of him coming out right now and saying he's done if he's not done? He's at an age where he's not getting any younger, and then secondly, he's going out on top. Who does that ever? You know, it's rare. And financially, I know he's in a good position. So why would he retire if he was going to come back? I mean, he's done everything he needs to accomplish. And so I personally think he is, but you never know. I mean, athletes are weird like that, but he's been off a while too. That's the other thing, is he's been off. So it's not like this is the first time he'll go off, in the sense of off the mat and not fighting. I know he's been training, but I'm just saying for fighting, you know, he's been off for a little while, other than what he recently did. See him coming back personally.
Yeah, I mean, he's never actually dropped the R word before, but he did so today, so that might actually be a thing. And Ian Heinisch was the other guy I had on last week.
Okay, yeah.
That's right.
Both great kids. Yeah, both great guys.
Yeah, what a story he has. Unbelievable.
Yeah, he has an amazing story. Yeah, amazing.
So let's talk UFC 234. You had the aforementioned Jonathan Martinez, who had an excellent performance at that event. A couple of 30-27s, a 29-28. There's no doubt who won that fight. Jonathan's a really tough guy. He proved it in the Andre Sukumta fight. Andre said the exact same thing a couple weeks ago when I had him on. But he gets his first UFC win in Australia. Talk about, you know, Jonathan's performance and what that meant to you as a coach to see him get that illustrious first UFC W.
So you guys call him Jonathan, and we call him Pedro. He looks like Pedro from Napoleon Dynamite, right? So we give him a hard time about that. And you should ask him to show you some photos of himself when he's got that awesome mustache. He's a good kid. This is the first time. Are we having a poor connection? Sorry.
I see you fine. You were breaking up a little bit,
Okay.
but we're good now.
Are we good now?
Yeah.
This is the first time I've trained Jonathan for a fight. I've known about him because he's kind of close to us. I've seen his career. I saw his first UFC fight. He was actually on the same card as Anthony Smith in Canada. And I got to see him there, and he took that obviously short notice, like most kids do, coming into the UFC like that against a really tough opponent. So you can see he's tough. You can see he's skilled. You can see he's got grit. And when he hit me up, there, and we talked, and then later said, "Hey, coach, I'd like to come out and train with you guys." I was open arms to a kid like that. He's absolutely a hard worker, super quiet kid. One of our biggest jobs is to get him out of his shell and teach him how to not just be a ninja on the mat, but also one in front of a camera. So, but a great kid, and I was really impressed with his performance. He looked good. He went out there, fought another tough guy, and getting your first UFC win is tough. That's tough. But one of the things he told me is he felt like from the training, from the sacrifice he made away from his family and coming to Denver and training with us at Factory X, he just felt a lot more calm. I think part of that too was that he'd already been in the UFC cage and felt like, hey, this is just fighting. And he didn't take it past that and just didn't overthink it and went out there and executed what we know he can do. And it was awesome to see him do that.
Yeah, it's funny you talking about him being a quiet and a shy guy. I was watching his post-fight scrum last week, and he said at some points he has to have people actually order his food when he goes out to eat because he's that shy. Is that true? Have you been there for that at all?
Hey, listen, he's not having any of us order his damn food. His wife might do that, but he's ordering his food. We made sure that he ordered his food and that he was prepped for his interviews. We prepped him for his interviews like we prepped him for his fight. So, with that kid, he's an awesome. He's trained and he works really hard and he's super coachable. That's something that was a fit. One of the things that was a fit for us and myself and my staff is that he's coachable. So, he's a force to be reckoned with, especially as young in the sense of his career is in the UFC. You're going to see him progress a lot and make a statement in his division.
Are you like Kevin Costner and Bull Durham when they're on the bus and he's trying to teach Tim Robbins' character how to do interviews and what to say? Is it kind of the same thing?
Hey, I had to tell him in the locker room, Rose goes in the front, big guy, like Kevin Costner said in Bull Durham, right? About the garters. You remember that?
I do. I love that movie.
Yeah, exactly. I use that line all the time to these young kids. They have no idea what the hell I'm talking about, actually. So, but yeah, a little bit for sure.
That's so funny. Of course, Devante Smith on that card. Holy cow, one of the big stars of the event. The betting community, the daily fantasy community, we're all in on Devante Smith, and he delivered in a big way with the big-time finish. Did it on a big platform, and I feel like there really is no ceiling on a guy like that. He's super talented. The sky is absolutely the limit on him. You see it a lot more than any of us do. What are your thoughts on his performance on Saturday night and what this could all potentially lead to for a guy like that?
Yeah, Devante Smith's performance was amazing. It was what we expected him to do. He's super talented. He's another up-and-coming kid coming out of Factory X, and he comes from Ohio. He's a Cleveland kid, and he's one of the things I talked about is he lives in Cleveland, but essentially he's going to spend about 40 weeks in Colorado because if he fights 4 times, he spent per fight, you're looking at about 40 weeks. So, he once we managed his expectations and explained to him, hey, here's what it is, he's all in. And a kid like that, you can't cry about coaching a guy like Devante Smith because not only is he talented, but he is really coachable and he's hungry to go out there and make a statement for what he is, what he's about, change the course of what he's doing in life and really help and propel his family forward.
I talked to him last week, and I thought one of the more interesting things that he said was, I asked him about being the ESPN headliner, having all those extra eyes on him, and he said that he treated it like it was just another day in his life. Like, he didn't care about that at all. I mean, I've had fighters say things like that to me in the past, and sometimes I feel like they're playing the Bull Durham role, like just trying to say the right thing. And I actually believed him when he said that. I believe he truly didn't care that he was on ESPN. His demeanor, his mental approach to this game is incredible, in my opinion. How do you see it?
No, I agree. Some of it is obviously from my experience as a coach with fighters before he ever was in the UFC, knowing some of those pitfalls, right, and knowing the quicksand. And so managing that with him and letting him know that, hey, here's what to expect, here's what to pay attention to, here's what not to pay attention to. So some of that is helping him navigate through life, and that's a big part of what I do. Easy part of what I do is coaching these guys on the mat. The hard part is off the mat. And so, taking that responsibility off the mat and coaching him up in life is a big job, and it's one that I'm up for, and I feel is helped him. But he also has to make a choice to listen and learn and decide, okay, I'm going to trust that. And he has. And so he's gone out there, and not that it's all been from me. It's been suggestions from me. Ultimately, it's about him. He's had to go out and choose to say, all right, I'm going to do these things. He's a really good kid. He's hungry and humble. And so that helps a lot, because coming from that background and where he's at gives him the ability to do what he's doing right now, but also stay in that lane where, he's not getting too big for his britches.
Overall, Melbourne, the arena, the Australian crowd, Dana White was actually smiling at the post-fight press conference. It's not something you see very often at the post-fight press conferences these days. But right. he even said, like, if they could do cards there every weekend, he'd be a really happy guy. What was your fight week experience like that week in Melbourne, as a coach and just as a person traveling to Australia?
Yeah, I think that's my fourth time to Australia, and I've been to New Zealand once, so essentially it's 5 times there. It's always fun in Australia. It's the trip getting there never gets easier, though. That's for sure. The trip back doesn't get easier. So again, those are things, Devonte, Jonathan, they've never been that far ever. And because I have that experience, and some of the other guys, some of the other fighters have that experience, we were able to impart some knowledge on what to expect and the good and the bad. And so again, those are things that help those guys. The fans out there are incredible. They packed that arena. I want to say, they told me, if I'm quoting it right, they sold that out in 8 minutes after it went on sale. And so, and it showed. I mean, Jonathan was the first fight of the night, and that thing was over half full. You don't see that in the U.S. ever. No. The first fight of the night at half full. So it was half full, and by the time Devonte got out there being the main event, quote unquote, on prelims, it was packed. So it was fun. They're a fun crowd, and they're knowledgeable. They have knowledgeable fans, and I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I guess I look forward to going back to Australia again.
Wow, look at you. And
right?
a fellow, a co-Australian, so to speak. So,
well, let's not get that.
I know. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I actually like Devante's call out of Trinaldo. I actually asked Devante if the UFC turned him around quick to fight in Brazil, would he do that? And he talked about the travel, and he was like, nah, man, I want to do this in the U.S. if possible. That was a long trip. And he talked about how harrowing it was for him. But I think it's a good test for him. It's a chance to move up in a really deep division in the UFC and in the sport in general. Do you like the call out as his coach? Does it, fit his trajectory in the correct way, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, everything Devonte does is calculated. It's thought about not only from himself, but from myself and his manager, Jason House. And, everything he's doing is calculated. It doesn't mean he's going to get that right the second. It just means that he's ready to fight guys at that tier. And that's something that's a matchup that Devonte likes. But there's other people available in the division still that he could fight. I would love to see him have a quick turnaround and fight here soon, maybe, toward the early spring-ish, something like that, April, May time period. So Yeah, I would love to see him do that. He's healthy. He's ready to go. He's ready to come back out here. He's actually going to come back out here after the card Anthony Smith's on next week, because he's going to go out there and obviously support Anthony and wants to go to see that Cole card and fight. And so after that, though, he's back out here, and we'll have him back training and learning and getting better. And when they make the call, which I think will be fairly quick, that's my hope, then we get him back in the cage.
You know, you talk about being essentially 5 trips to Australia, and the weigh-in structure over there is a lot different than it is in the United States. It was sort of the old style. The ceremonial weigh-in is the actual weigh-in, not like it is here in the United States. How did you've adjusted to it several times before, but how did, your fighters adjust to it? How did they prepare for that all?
Well, preparation came from, again, managing their expectations, telling them to fight in the morning there, which technically is the evening in the U.S. And then also weigh-ins are going to be different. They're going to be more of the old style, and just prep them for it. So before they left, I had already prepped them there and went over all of the things I could think about that were important for them to know pre-getting there. And so they just were like, okay. And then they went through it. And we're like, yeah, coach, this is different, but we already knew this was coming. So it wasn't a big surprise, and we didn't have to, shift gears there. They just were prepared for it. So acclimation wise, we had our own strategy of what to do and not to do there. And they got there a little early anyway. So, but they were ready to fight like it was the evening in the U.S.
Your team is just loaded with talent, up and coming, some cemented guys in there as well. A lot of big fights coming up. As a coach, I'm sure all fights on your team are huge, but from the outside looking in, from a fan perspective, the big one, obviously, Anthony Smith getting ready to challenge Jon Jones for the UFC light heavyweight title. And I was actually talking on a podcast a couple weeks ago about Anthony Smith, and I was saying that when I interviewed him after he got back into the UFC after his tenure with CFFC, this is a guy who couldn't even get Derek Brunson's attention. And this is no disrespect to Derek, but Derek was just starting to get going at 185, and this was at the beginning of that big winning streak he would have before the Robert Whittaker fight. And now, 3.5 years later, he's getting ready to fight Jon Jones. So I mean, as a coach, how proud of you are you of Anthony Smith and what he has been able to accomplish, especially in this last year? I mean, his progression is just incredible.
Yeah, I don't know if I can articulate words of how proud I am of Anthony Smith. He's come a long way. I was talking to him the other day about just what he looked like when he first came to Factory X and we first started training versus the athlete he is today. His progression's been amazing to watch, not just physically, but mentally. He's become, a staple here in the sense of here on the team. And man, just knowing that in our sport that fighting for the world title is the equivalent of NFL players playing for the Super Bowl, that's a big deal. Smile on my face. And one of the things I shared with Anthony that I thought was pertinent for this was, as a coach, I've had the opportunity, have been really blessed to go through multiple world titles with Joe Warren. Joe Warren and I have won multiple world titles, and we've lost multiple world titles. And so having the ability to go through that taught me a lot. And I imparted a lot of my knowledge with Anthony about that pursuit. And one of the biggest things I told him is enjoy every second of this, because if you're fixated only on that fight night, whether you win or not, you will sit there and be like, man, I missed something because you didn't enjoy the process. And so I've really tried to beat that into this whole camp is let's enjoy today, man. Let's have fun today. Let's work hard today. Let's enjoy the process of learning and getting better and failing and doing all the things we need to do in preparation to go win another world title. And he's really embraced that. And I'm glad that I learned that as a coach, because I learned a tough lesson the first time Joe Warren and I won the title in Bellator. I remember, the hour and a half after winning the title was exhilarating. But I remember sitting in the hotel an hour and a half ish later, and I was by myself, and I was like, man, that's it. And it was all by myself, man. And I was like, this is it. And it dawned on me that I didn't enjoy the process of the entire thing. And the next time Joe Warren and I won a title after that, I started camp. I made it a statement and to him that we're going to enjoy this whole process. And that's something that I know I embraced, he embraced. And not that the first one wasn't amazing. It was amazing. You can't ever replace that. But the second one was just a lot more sweet because we enjoyed the whole thing. And we both were sitting there. And I never went in my room that time and was like, that's it, because I enjoyed the whole thing. So Anthony's done that. And when we go out there and shock the world and win the world title on 3-2 here next week, we're gonna both look at each other and go, man, this is sweet. So I'm looking forward to that.
You know, we talk about how you have Anthony preparing for this, and I know, you know, you talk about the past with Joe Warren, enjoying the process throughout. But, you know, as a coach, you're obviously enjoying this process. This is a huge deal. But as a competitive guy, I'm sure you are. Us bald people are very competitive. Is this the kind of fight that dreams are made of? I mean, Jon Jones has been a guy that no one's been able to figure out. I know Gustafsson gave him hell in their first fight, but, you know, rumor and innuendo will tell you that was a Jon Jones who sort of floated into that first fight and still won. I mean, it's about the fighter. It's about helping your fighter succeed and putting Anthony Smith in the best possible place to win that fight. Totally 100% understand that. But as a coach, figuring out how to solve this puzzle, is this something that you are truly enjoying and just diving all into, or are you just kind of laying back a little bit and trying not to think about that too much?
No, I've dove head in. I'm all in when it comes to that. And excuse me, you saying solve the puzzle, I've used that term this whole camp. He's a tough puzzle to solve. I've watched Jon Jones tape, video, tendencies than I can even explain, and I'll watch it all the way up until the night of the fight, just to see if I've missed anything. And so, no, when it comes to solving the puzzle, he's great. There's a reason why he's done what he's done. I respect his coaches a ton as well, and they've coached him very well. He's got good IQ, and he's a great talent athletically, and he's gone out there and he's done what he's done because of all those attributes. So trying to solve the puzzle on my end has been a blast. It's been frustrating. It's been fun. And to see the end product where Anthony sits right now is super, super exciting. It's like when you have the 2,000 piece puzzle and you're down to the last 3 pieces and you're like, oh yeah, well, I know where those go. That's where we're sitting right now. And we're excited to go and show ourselves. You know, we're ready to impress ourselves, not anyone else. Because if we impress ourselves, everyone else will be impressed. And that's something that I'm looking forward to. I'm really confident that Anthony can do. At the end of the day, he's going to leave it all in there. And the preparation that he's done, he hasn't left anything on the table. That puts a smile on my face. And we just finished tonight, right before I got on with you. I just finished training with him, obviously, and he's ready to go. He's been tapering. He looks good. His weight's great. His attitude's great. We're ready to rock. I mean, I'm so excited and just honored to get the ability to go out there and even game plan against someone like Jon Jones. But I'm not mesmerized by who he is. Neither is Anthony. He does have some holes. There's not gaping ones, but he's got some holes, and we look to capitalize on those holes.
Have you had certain days training with Anthony where you're trying to break Jon down, and had any, George Costanza moments where you're like, maybe we'll work on this tomorrow, and then you take a few steps like you're heading towards the door, and all of a sudden you're like, aha, I figured it out, I got it. Like, have you had any moments like that trying to put this puzzle together?
Oh yeah, man. I've had some moments too where I'm like, holy shit, what are we doing, right? But I would be lying to you if I didn't have that moment in every single one of my fighters' fights. When I'll tell you a quick story. When Anthony got the fight to fight Shogun, I can't remember how many days, but it was short. It was like 5, 6, 7 days, somewhere around there. It was real short notice, and it was in Germany, And it was the whole thing where we got to travel overseas. How are we going to get ready? So I sat down at my kitchen table and I started writing on a blank piece of paper what we were going to do for the few days we had to game plan. I did that 5 times. I threw 5 pieces of paper away 5 times, and I was sitting there staring at the blank table, and my wife looked at me and she's like, "What the hell are you doing?" I'm like, "I don't know. I can't figure this shit out." And then it just dawned on me. It was like, it's not about this. It's about his confidence. I need to just boost his confidence. He just got done fighting. He was already in shape. So it was about his confidence, and I felt like that was the right path, and we just needed to go get sharp, stay super razor sharp, confidence, and go out there and essentially in that camp, we used that term, burn the boats. We're gonna go land in Germany. We're gonna burn the boats. We have no way home. Let's go. And we've had moments in this preparation now where, we're gonna go burn the boats. We're gonna go get that lion. We're gonna go get that bone, and you're gonna fight for that bone. Who's gonna get it? And Anthony's ready to go capture that bone.
It's interesting about this business because the journalistic approach, the approach that people would probably want me to take here is, ask you about a game plan, asking you about a prediction, but I don't care about that. Like I just want to see the fight, and I'm actually more fascinated about sort of mindset and the intangibles that fighters bring to the table. Like there's always something about every fighter, no matter who they're fighting, they hold that intangible, something that like no matter what the opponent trains and prepares for, that one thing overrides it in the end. It's not something that you can be taught. It's just something you have and always have. And ignoring it can be disastrous, but keeping it at the forefront can be really rewarding for a fighter. So, outside of like the lessons you've taught Anthony, the things about enjoying the process, what's that one thing that Anthony Smith has, something you've learned about him over the years that Jon can't touch no matter how talented he is?
Well, I think Anthony's a born fighter, and he's I categorize fighters in 3 categories. They're either a fighter, they're a competitor, or they're an athlete. And of course, they can be a mixture of all 3. But gun to my head, hey, what's Anthony Smith? He's a fighter, and he's not a fighter just in the cage. He's a fighter in life. He's gone through some stuff in life that he's had to fight through, and he's had to overcome. And so he's a fighter. You go in there. If I was to categorize Jon Jones, he's a competitor. He's an athlete. He's a competitor, and they're different. That doesn't mean that one's better than the other, but man, you get that has that mixture, and he's willing to die in there, literally. Anthony would fight in the Walmart parking lot for no money against Jon Jones. It's just because he wants to take away the belt, right? And I truly know that about him. So because he's a fighter, that's the intangible no one can touch. He'll never get rid of that. And so that's one of the things that makes him special.
I spoke to Ian last week. I know he's got the big fight coming up in London, March 16th with Tom Breeze. You got a lot of fighters there. So run down who else you got coming up. I know obviously Anthony's coming up, but whether it be in the UFC or outside of it, what can you remember anyways?
We got Chris Garris and Macy Barber. They're fighting here in March on the 23rd in Nashville. I've got Court McGee coming up in April. We've got a few other UFC guys that are making some changes, meaning they're coming over to fight. Some of those guys are going to fight in April as well. I can't say their names yet, but a few of those guys are going to be coming up. We got some kids this weekend, obviously, that are talented. One of which is Sid Bice, who's fighting in LFA. He's always I love watching Sid fight. So he's fighting soon. Yusuf Zalal is another up-and-coming guy that's fighting. Steve Seiler is going to re-enter the PFL tournament. I'm going to run out of breath, but there's a bunch coming up here in March, April, early May. So, we got one of the things that I've always been very conscious of is I never wanted to rebuild. I just wanted to reload. And we've done a great job of reloading. And that's one of the reasons why we have vets that are doing great stuff. And one of the reasons why we have these young up and comers doing great things as well. So, I can't tell you, man, I'm not working, man. I'm blessed to do what I get to do. And this isn't work. This is absolutely an amazing life. It's been tough getting here, but what isn't that's worth having? So it's just an amazing opportunity, and I'm super blessed to be here.
2018 was a big one for you and your team. Everyone I've talked to that works with you believes that this will be the year that Factory X becomes the #1 gym in the world. Ian said that. Devonte said that as well, and it's hard to argue that right now. The head coach joining us, Marc Montoya. Marc, I could do another hour with you easily, but unfortunately we have run out of time. We will absolutely have to do this again. Maybe we'll check in after the big fight with Anthony Smith. But before we get out of here, let the folks know where to find and follow you on the web, social media, any shout-outs, anything else you want to get off your chest for the peeps. Please take the floor.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to my coaching staff. They do an amazing job. I couldn't do this without them. Professor Busy is an amazing coach here. Randy Caruso does amazing stuff. All the staff at Landau Performance, Eric Telly and Wrigley, they do an amazing job. I couldn't do any of this without my family, though. My wife and my 2 kids, they support me like none other. If they didn't do that, I couldn't be gone every weekend like I do. But man, they're why we all get to do this. They're sacrifice. And so my entire team here, the team here at Factory X, is an amazing group of guys like Chris Camozzi, who paved the path for a lot of these guys. He was my first ever UFC fighter. He'll always be like my firstborn. He's really done an amazing job when it comes to laying the foundation and showing, just essentially carrying on the culture that we started. So, there's so many people to thank. I just thank them all. And you can always get a hold of me on Twitter, which is Coach M. Montoya. You can get me on Instagram, Coach Marc Montoya. And those are 2 places to find me. I respond to all my stuff personally. So if you get a message from me, it's coming from me. So I'd love to hear from you guys. Even the haters sometimes is always good. I typically don't respond to the haters just because it's not worth it, but it happens. So we appreciate everyone.
Man, even you have haters? This MMA thing is wacky. This is crazy, man. Unbelievable. Yeah. Marc, thank you for the time. Thanks, congratulations on all the success. All the best for 2019, Anthony Smith, and looking forward to that fight. I can't wait for it.
Awesome, man. I appreciate you having me on. Thanks again. I'll be available anytime.